Kicking off the list at number 10, Matthew Malloy. While we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of mutants into the MCU, there's quite a few mutants that I wouldn't want hanging out near Peter, Ned, or MJ, like Matthew Malloy, for example. See, Matthew was a regular Joe living in Charleston, South Carolina, but all of a sudden Earth gets hit with a Skrull invasion. Gotta love Mondays in the Marvel Universe. Sick. Things escalate when his wife Jules is vaporized by a blast from said Skrull ship, and his home was also just toast. Just a complete tragedy from the start. Now, one depressing, dark, lonely year later, he sees his late wife's sister, and they finally catch up. And it's hard for Matthew, of course, to talk about this stuff. This is still just a year ago, so it's all very fresh. So he's feeling it, and that's when his mutant powers decided to manifest. He erupted with energy, sadly also ending the life of Jules' sister. Not looking good so far. And then while he's standing there in shock, Maria Hill's hologram shows up out of a drone, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you a mutant? What are your powers? What's going on? Do you have Geico?" He's a little stressed out on what's happening, so he freaks out a little more. So she sends in a strike team, and this just caused him to release even more energy and take even more lives. S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up sending in an airstrike, and that ended the lives of Cyclops, Magic, and Matthew, but those powers were better than we thought, because Matthew came back to life. Immortality for the win. Next, he teleported to the Jean Grey school, where he then took the life of Emma Frost. Now, Tempus at this point decided the only way to take care of this beyond Omega level threat was to go back in time and make sure his parents never meet. Then we can avoid having this supervillain from exploding over and over again. There's a link there, page 10. Mutants are cool and all, but this is evidence of how a regular guy can be riddled with tragedy in the Marvel Universe. Imagine if Zemo got these powers, Civil War would be over in like 22 minutes. Number 9, Molecule Man. Owen Reese started his days out as a small, puny, ridiculously looking laboratory technician whose life changed forever one day at work. Also, that's how the Watcher described him. I'm not being mean. He's breaking down his origins to the Fantastic Four, and he's low-key roasting the guy the entire time. It's pretty great. He was working for Acme Atomic Corp, but one day he got distracted and made a mistake while making adjustments to that atomic machine. He was distracted because he was monologuing about how much his life sucks. He was like, "Oh, I'm just a nobody wearing green pants at work, boo-hoo, no one knows my name." And then in the middle of his pity party, he gets blasted with energy, but somehow he survives. His boss of 12 years calls him in the office, and he's like, "Hey, I heard about your accident, Mr. whatever your name is. We can't have that happen here. You're fired." Which, first of all, as far as lawsuits go, could you imagine? But Owen doesn't pack up and leave. No, instead, he pulls out a wand that can control his powers, and he turns Boss Man into a snow cone. He can now control every molecule in the universe, and like Reed Richards says, if a man can control molecules, he can control anything. Guy's really brilliant with that groundbreaking assessment. Thanks, Reed. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It's a lot of dark, tragic stuff going on here, so let's brighten the mood a little bit by doing a little hitting that button. Thanks so much, you guys are the best. Back to this list. Number 8, Mad Jim Jaspers. Old Jimmy J. Okay, he made his first appearance in Daredevil's number 7 back in 1983. He was created by Alan Davis and Alan Moore, and when he first hit the pages, he was a British politician serving as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He was serving as a member of Parliament for Haslope West, and he wasn't a fan of superheroes either. He wanted to keep Britain safe, and superheroes crashing through buildings and punching each other in the back, no thanks. Sounds like the opposite of safety. They're old school, I get it. But he also wasn't alone. Many others agreed with him, and in turn, he won a general election. Only 2 issues after he's introduced, we find out he's a mutant with reality warping powers, who of course is also insane. He was just taking out other heroes so that he could rule secretly. Classic little twisty twist. He created and used this machine called the Fury, which hunted down superhumans. Meanwhile, he would be off committing crimes with his Alice in Wonderland themed gang. I know Disney loves crossovers, but I think this would be a little too weird. Number 7, the Fallen One. First appearing in Thanos issue 11, the Fallen One was once a herald of Galactus, who of course we mentioned in part 1. Now the difference between later heralds of Galactus, this Fallen One was empowered by dark energy instead of cosmic radiation, which was the norm. So in turn, he was quite cruel. He was evil enough that Galactus himself had to imprison him. The Fallen One was also a sneaky one. He would often escape and then re-attack Galactus all over again. It was a vicious circle until Star-Lord came in and imprisoned the Fallen One into the Klin, that prison we see in the Garden Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, when the Clin was later destroyed during a conflict with Thanos and the Maker, the Fallen One again broke free, went back to Galactus, but this time Galactus teleported him back to Thanos. He's like, no, you go fight him, Mr. Crazy Guy, get out of here. Thanos ended up defeating him, but only because he tricked the Fallen One into igniting a gas giant. At this point, Thanos made him become a herald for himself, right? Might as well. The Fallen One can control black matter, which is a pretty big deal. He can use that matter to enhance his own speed, strength, durability, you name it. You wouldn't see him coming either, because he can travel at the same speed of light. Now, we just got Thanos out of the MCU, so let's never bring back his herald either. No thanks. Number 6, Spiral. Rita Wayward made her debut in Longshot issue 1. She's actually a loyal servant to the spineless Mojo that we mentioned in part 1 of this list. But it didn't always start that way, of course not. See, Ricochet Rita was once a professional stunt performer. She became friends with a guy named Longshot who was already from that Mojoverse. She was actually attacked by this insane version of herself called Spiral from the future. They fought, she won, and she thought that was the end of that problem. Now you gotta remember that, because it's for sure not the end. Rita actually decided to follow her heart and go back to that Mojoverse with her new boy toy, Longshot. And then when they get there, they're both captured by Mojo. Longshot's mind was wiped, now forgetting Rita, which is so sad already. But for Rita, it just gets worse. Mojo got his scientists to modify her mentally and physically, so now she has 6 arms, and her hair is also gray, and now, oh, she can also see other dimensions. She was like a twisted little version of Mojo, and she got trained in the dark arts of magic and body modification. And as you may have guessed, that future version of her was just that. Mojo sent her new and improved self to go back in time and attack her past self. It's just a nice loop of trouble. Number 5, Kid Omega. Quentin Quire made his first appearance in X-Men issue 134. He's been described as one of the most powerful telepaths right next to Jean Grey, and believe it or not, he was once also the host of the Phoenix Force. In his early super days, Quentin was one of Xavier's prize pupils, until he put together the Omega Gang. He wasn't always a bad kid though, it's just on his birthday when he was still young, he received a call from his parents to say that he was adopted. And honestly, if I got that gift on my birthday, I'd probably turn evil too. I don't blame the kid. This Omega Gang likes to handle humans the way that they feel like, with violence and mutant monologues. He's been described as an Omega level telepath and telekinetic, so if mutants are too much for the MCU right now, Kid Omega surely won't be around for quite a while. Number 4, Overmind. First appearing in Fantastic Four issue 113, Overmind, aka Grom, was an Eternal born on the planet Young. He was a fierce gladiator whose job it was to prevent overpopulation. He conquered hundreds of worlds, he won thousands of fights, and he took out entire species. He's the champion of champions. Literally, the Eternals held the games to test everybody to see who the most powerful was, and Grom was the winner. He's the ultimate physical specimen of the Eternals, and part of me wants to meet him in the next Eternals movie, and part of me doesn't want to know what conquering planets and thousands of souls looks like either. Let's keep this guy in the books, definitely. Number 3, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. When Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, they were all under fire, so they had to run and take cover in a nearby cave. Now the cave was actually home to the lost temple of Cyttorak. So just who is this Cyttorak guy? And also, nice temple by the way. Cyttorak is a powerful entity that is both a god and a demon. Best of both worlds, lovely. He was worshipped on Earth way back in the day, but was eventually banished to the Crimson Cosmos. Cyttorak's gem contained all of its power, so when Kane stumbled across it and then decided to read the inscription, whoever touches this gem shall possess the power of the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Henceforth, you who read these words shall become forevermore a human Juggernaut. And then Kane turned into just that. Now we have Ryan Reynolds coming over from the Foxverse into the MCU, and I doubt they would bring over such a high caliber character like Juggernaut as well. He might be a little bit too soon for that. He would literally rip the Avengers apart also. We see Doctor Strange summon the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak in Infinity War while the team is fighting Thanos on Titan, so never say never. Number 2, Proteus. Kevin McTaggart was the son of Moira McTaggart and her husband Joseph. Now the marriage was the opposite of healthy. Joseph was abusive mentally and physically and just an all-around horrible human being. So Moira got out of there. She didn't even tell Joseph that she was pregnant. The less he knows the better, honestly. Just move on, get out of Dodge. So young Kevin and Moira soon lived together at her mutant research center off the coast of Scotland. Now Kevin, as he got older, manifested mutant abilities, so now he has this uncontrollable need for power. He craved it, literally. So Moira had to hide him. She had to keep him locked up in a cell for years and only referred to him as Mutant X, which is kind of a dark nickname already off the bat. I mean, sure, could have just still called him Kevin, but great. She wanted to keep him safe and also not have strangers get the soul sucked out of them on their way to work, so that's a bonus, keep him tucked below. But one day while Magneto was fighting the X-Men, Kevin's cell was damaged and he got out. Since the isosteric energy in his cell was no longer holding him back, Kevin was able to take down Polaris, Multiple Man, and he was even able to evade the Phoenix. But after doing so, his body began to burn out, just like Moira tried to prevent all this time. So now the only solution he has was to possess human hosts, one after another. He renamed himself Proteus, with his imagination the only thing that limits his powers. He's made of psionic energy, and he too can warp reality. Every time he possesses a new host, he gets stronger and stronger and stronger, until eventually the host burns out, and then he warps to possess another poor soul. And finally, number 1, Amora the Enchantress. She made her first debut back in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and her relationship with Thor is... honestly, I'd kind of love to see this in live action, but I feel like we're quite far from this type of power in the MCU. So half the time she wants to take out Thor, and the other half she's trying to take him out to dinner. It's really a love-hate relationship. Now, Amora has a pretty sweet life before all this. She's got multiple mansions throughout all the 9 realms, and can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even on a bad day, she's still getting rich. She's really good at seducing people as well. I mean, it's literally her superpower. For example, Scourge, she would seduce him into helping her with evil plans, and he was like, oh yeah, you bet, anything for you, you're so hot, let's do it. And then afterwards, Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just continue to play hard to get. She messes with your mind and your heart. That's a double whammy. One kiss is all it takes for her to completely own you and your soul. In the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster because the whole, loving on different worlds thing is long distance, I guess. That's a no-go for the God Squad. But when she tried to attack Jane, Thor intervened and she was banished to Earth by Odin, where she then joined the Masters of Evil. Now, she doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because, well, she doesn't really need it. She just gets other lovers to fight her fights for her. The Bachelorette in space. Nice, tune in, love it. Kicking off the list at number 10, Moonstone. She made her first debut in Captain America issue 192. Carla Soffin was a psychiatrist, but instead of helping her patients, she sent them into paranoia instead. So the worst doctor ever, that's great. This life choice led her down the path to become a villain, obviously, starting with an assistant position to the Dr. Faustus. So eventually she made her way to Lloyd Block, the original Moonstone. Then she poisoned him with hallucinogens, and then she made him hand over the Moonstone, which was a Kree device that grants the users like tons of powers. So we can see this exchange go down in the Incredible Hulk issue 299. She gives the Hulk a run for his money. She then joined the Masters of Evil and went up against the Avengers numerous times. She was one of the villains that stepped up once the Avengers went missing. She was on the Thunderbolts team, referring to herself as Meteorite, which sounds almost more scary, more villainous than anything. And before we go on with this list of Hulk villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and smash that like button, Hulk smash that like button, if I may, because it helps out our channel tons here. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to this list already. Number 9, UFOs. Yes, one of the biggest Hulk villains is a group of UFOs flying in the sky, God forbid. No, the UFOs made their first comic book debut in Incredible Hulk issue 254. They were inspired by the Fantastic Four's origin story, okay? So they were power hungry and they went to great lengths to get it. Now their plan was to recreate that same accident that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. I mean, they even went so far as to get the same engineers that built the original shuttle. So they were pretty committed. Their attempt was going well until, of course, Dr. Banner intervened. He thought the group had been exposed by accident, and when he found their ground control facility, he did the hero thing and brought the shuttle safely back down in order to save their lives. But they didn't want to be saved. They got powers, however, all 4 of them got powers, and when they saw Banner was the one to interrupt them from perhaps even getting more powers, they lashed out at him. And they went on to call themselves the UFOs. Number 8, Tyrannus. He made his first comic book debut in Incredible Hulk issue 5. Romulus Augustulus was the last emperor of the Roman Empire. He was born a little bit before us, back in the year 463 AD, so he's kind of old, a little bit. At just the age 12, he took the throne. Age 12! That's some Game of Thrones stuff right there. I bet he was a better leader than Joffrey still. So he had the throne, but nobody took him seriously because, well, yeah, he was 12. He's trying to knight people and like his hands are small. He's like, like, what? Who are you? What are you doing? Get out of here. You're nothing. So he ruled for about 12 months, and then his father was defeated by the German Goth Odoacer, which kicked off the Dark Ages in Europe. He was then banished from the kingdom, where little 12-year-old Romulus swore to return. And he did. He returned in the 6th century as Tyrannus, when he became a servant of Pluto, who empowered him and sent him to destroy Merlin. Like the magician Merlin. Merlin whooped his ass and then banished Romulus, or Tyrannus, beneath the earth to a realm called Subterranea. Now while under there, he found a bunch of deviant technology, and then he attacked Earth, finding the Fountain of Youth along the way, which made him young forever, made him young for centuries, and then eventually he ended up kidnapping Betty Ross and holding her as hostage in order to try and conquer the United States, which got the big green guy on his radar. Number 7, Mephisto. In a list of villains too powerful for the MCU, clearly Mephisto is on that list. We thought he was going to be the one pulling the strings in WandaVision, but as the catchy theme song revealed, it was Agatha Harkness all along. Mephisto made his first full appearance in Silver Surfer issue 3, and he's been making deals with everybody since. Like when Spider-Man revealed his identity in the Civil War storyline, that led to a bullet striking Aunt May, so he offers Peter a deal while Aunt May is dying in the hospital. The world will forget Peter Parker is truly Spider-Man, but in turn Mephisto gets his marriage. It's kind of like Shrek 4, but way more fun. And this movie's probably gonna make way more money than Shrek 4. I mean, maybe, hopefully, I hope. You don't even need to be a superhero to have an eventful night with Mephisto either. Like in Journey into Mystery issue 627, he would show up to a random pub and he tells the bartender a story, and if you listen to his tale, he'll give you a nice fat tip. But if you slip up, things can get pretty ugly. Next time you get that really annoying regular at your bar, just think, it could literally be the devil and be a lot worse. Consider yourself lucky. Number 6, Vulcan. The younger brother of both Cyclops and Havoc, Gabriel Summers made his first appearance in X-Men Deadly Genesis. Before Catherine Summers even had a chance to give birth to the third child, he was transferred into an incubation accelerator, so he grew up real quick. After this, he was sent to Earth to work for Eric the Red, but luckily he didn't stick around to let that happen too long. He changed his name quickly from Gabriel to Kid Vulcan, which sounds way cooler already, but it was also inspired by Roman mythology. I guess the other names already belong to DC characters. But Xavier eventually met him, and because of his mental powers, he knew that this boy was a relative to the Summers family. Vulcan had forgotten about his history at this point as well, but he suited up with Petra, Darwin, and Sway, and together they rescued the original X-Men. It wasn't easy though. Cyclops thought Vulcan had died when the island decided to fight back. Vulcan is an Omega level mutant, and he's also insane. What a jazzy combo. Vulcan can manipulate, absorb, and control energy. This includes Cyclops' optic blasts or even Adam Warlock's energy. And of course, interstellar flight makes those cosmic commutes nice and smooth. Number 5, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in turn Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which I've mentioned on other lists before because that's one of the more painful encounters I've ever seen in comic books. His healing factor then had to work overtime, and Xavier at this point decided it would be the right move to just shut Magneto's mind down, so then he made him catatonic. But during this exact moment, all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' subconscious, creating this new personality, Onslaught. Onslaught is quite lucky, because now he gets to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane where he can manipulate matter and energy. I mean, let's get X-Men into the MCU first, and then we'll start talking about evil mashups and swaps. Number 4, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. Just like the team over here at Top 10 Nerd, the more views he gets for this interdimensional TV show, the more powerful he gets as well. So if you didn't hit that like button, now you really have to. So in the 1992 issue titled Mojo's Media Madness, he had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine, and they all think that they're characters from The Wizard of Oz. It sounds fun, but for the MCU this would be way too stupid, dare I say. The comic is crazy enough. I mean, we see his madness really unfold in X-Men issue 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings, and they're from a planet named after him called Mojo World inside of a pocket dimension called Mojoverse. It's just all about him, eh? Wow. So this race of spineless beings were also slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from other space-time continuums like ours were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer. We're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go. We'll stick to watching these guys on our TV rather than having them sucked into a interdimensional Netflix, you know? That sounds better. Number 3, Apocalypse. Making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue 17 and then making his first full appearance in X Factor issue 5, Apocalypse was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked different. He had the Blue Man Group avatar vibe going on, so they left the child. How mean. Later on, he was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive. So already such a tragic childhood. Now in the desert, along came Baal of the Crimson Sands, leader of the Sandstormers, and he saw this kid crying, and he also saw potential, because clearly he was different. So he named him Ansabanur, which translates to Morning Light. He grew up becoming the most feared in the land, and eventually Baal led him to Ramatut's time ship in an underground tomb. Now Baal didn't survive this cave expedition, but Nur was now determined to be anything but an abused worker. Now he wanted revenge on Ramatut, the pharaoh ruler. And after being thrown into a pit of snakes, Nur grew in size and strength, easily defeating all the guards before finally declaring himself Apocalypse. We had this guy already in the Foxverse, but it didn't feel too great. I think we should let that wound heal a bit before bringing him into the MCU with the X-Men. Maybe like 8 years, then we'll talk. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. We see this happen a little bit in the MCU. So enter Project MODOK, yes, spelled with a C at the end instead of a K. That's important, you gotta remember that. MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. It sounds like a high-tech series, sounds perfect. What a great way to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. That's when things start to go south, obviously. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. Already it's downhill. This scientist did not know that with great power comes great responsibility, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad in the new Avengers game that's not too good, but it's still worth a play, and yes, he's as crazy as it sounds. And finally, number 1, Galactus. Wielder of the power cosmic, this one has to eat planets in order to survive. Yummy. We saw him in Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Well, I mean, we saw a cloud that sort of looked like him, I guess. Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Let's talk about him. The Great Destroyer made his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 48. He's the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. But originally he was a humanoid named Galan, born on a previous version of Earth called Planet Ta. It was a paradise whose civilization was much more advanced than any other in the universe at the time, which sounds quite lovely. But when the cosmos were soon ending the embodiment of the 6th infinity, the sentience of the multiverse approached Galan and merged with him. So now Galactus resides in the 7th iteration of his universe, which is home to our Earth 616. He's extremely powerful. He once ate all the Infinity Stones, so maybe we'll just keep them hidden in Casey's office desk for now, just to be safe. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Absorbing Man. Carl Crusher Creel already sounds intimidating enough. The Absorbing Man made his comic book debut back in Journey into Mystery issue 114. He was raised in the Bronx, and at a young age his mother passed away, and his father certainly wasn't there for him after. He was not a role model as well, to say the least. So sadly, Carl turned to the life of crime in order to pay the bills. And while he was spending time in the gym, he realized he was actually a pretty great boxer. He did so well that he became known as Crusher Creel, but that life of crime was still sprinkled in there, and then he was recruited as an enforcer for the Owl's Men. He eventually got caught and locked up, but this is when things start going a little bit fun in a way. See, Loki, Loki the god of mischief, he added this rare Asgardian herb to Carl's drinking water in hopes that he would get this new ability to take down Thor. Now, this new ability made him the Absorbing Man, a guy who could absorb the physical properties of anybody that he came into contact with. His first battle was with Thor, and then when he came back to Earth, he went toe-to-toe with the Hulk. I'd love an Absorbing Man in the MCU, honestly. I feel like I could watch 2 movies with Carl just fist-bumping all of our Avengers and causing chaos, taking powers, of course. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, that would be great because those likes do wonders for our page. You guys are the best, thank you so much. Now back to some more Hulk villains. Number 9, Speed Freak. Making his first debut in Incredible Hulk issue 388, Speed Freak aka Joss Shapp was a criminal who at one point got addicted to the substance called Snap. Oh snap. This plus the fact that he stole a super suit from an inventor sounds like a perfect supervillain origin story in the making. So Speed Freak had been hired by a man named Mr. Lang, and one of his first jobs was to attack a guy who had infected Mr. Lang's son. So Speed Freak went to fight it out, and while there, he had the misfortune of crossing paths with the Incredible Hulk, who tossed Speed Freak quite the distance. So his suit alone gives Speed Freak quite the advantage. It gives him the ability to hover above the ground, flying, literally being able to fly, and he also has arm-mounted adamantium cutting blades, so he might be a bit too crazy for the MCU, at least right now. Number 8, the Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish, issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the containers, bam, they broke open and then covered him in gamma radiation. Stearns survived just like Banner did, but it affected him in a different way. He went from being smart to becoming a genius, and his brain could absorb more and more information. It was his superpower. And it got to a point where his physical body started to mutate, so now he has this giant green brain head. I mean, he clearly looks like a villain, and then he started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind. He clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding. What a jerk. Number 7, By Beast. This guy is wild. Okay, so the By Beast started off as an android with 2 heads. So he had a head here and then a head here. Now the top head has knowledge of warfare, and the bottom head has knowledge of culture. It was created by the bird people, the avian race that were subspecies of the Inhumans. Now he's only around for one comic, that comic being The Incredible Hulk issue 169. Nice. So once the bird people had all passed away, this android was left in the floating city of Aerie. And then later down the road, Bybeast saw the Harpy with Banner and got some flashbacks to its bird masters, so it captured them both and demanded that Banner uses his brain to fix the decaying machines in the city. So Banner didn't do that. Instead, he cured the Harpy back into Betty Ross mode, which angered Bybeast even more. So now there's a fight with the Hulk and this 2-headed monster. It got pretty distracted when AIM was striking down on the city in a force led by MODOK, and he got stressed out and this thing straight up blew itself up. He's like, damn, the city's being attacked, Bruce Banner's got hands, ugh, see ya. But wait, there's more. See, the bird people actually created a second Bybeast, which did survive and kept going after the Hulk and other heroes. We love backups. Can't go wrong with backups. Number 6, Peacemeal. He first entered the world of comics with Incredible Hulk issue 407. Peacemeal was created by scientists working for the Red Skull in the Amazon jungle. He's a cyborg villain with claws that can cut through anything, your hopes and dreams, whatever, you name it, it'll cut right through. Now they wanted to use him as this being, this artificial being with all the abilities of the New World Order members included. Now they started to work on Project Peacemeal, but one of these scientists, Madman, rather fitting name, went a little bit too far, and without anybody knowing, he planted a device in Peacemeal so the android would follow his commands only. Kind of like Ultron almost, but with less James Spader and more gunslinger, you know? Peacemeal tried to escape this lab numerous times. One time the Juggernaut fought back and sent him back to the lab, and he's not having an easy go. Even when he tries to get out, it's not easy. So Peacemeal eventually grabbed onto the bottom of a plane and snuck out of Brazil and headed to Europe, where he visited the one place you would go to, you know, Loch Ness, and then he frightened tourists. That's when the Hulk came around and the two fought it out. So when Peacemeal changed his appearance to match the Hulk's, it distracted Banner long enough for the scientist to knock Banner out. That madman scientist knocked him right out. He didn't use a blow dart. I don't know why I did that, but I feel like we should use more blow darts. Number 5, Agamemnon. Valley Halfling made his debut in Incredible Hulk 379, and he's the son of a mortal woman and Loki. Like, Loki. Yeah, Loki brought him to Asgard and took care of him. Now, Valley once ended up in Hell, one time. Now, the underworld of Asgard is usually a pretty rough place, but since Hela was his half-sister, she released him. See, it's all about who you know, guys. It's all about who you know. Valley upset many Asgardians by stealing their secrets, so Odin did what he does best, and he sent him off. Bye, peace, off to another realm, get out of here, go, scoot. He banished him to Earth, cursed with eternal adolescence. So Valley traded the pick of his future offspring to the Trojan race in exchange for knowledge of immortality, which is just a great deal all around. You think of both sides, you're like, I'll never have either of these, this is great. Now, he's never confirmed or denied that he was the Agamemnon who was king of Argos and commander-in-chief of the Greek army against Troy in ancient times, but at this point, I'm afraid to ask. Nobody wants to know. They're like, you know what? Keep your secrets, Mr. Secret Man. He's quite powerful, being a master tactician and strategist, and he's also quite experienced in the use of magique. So the one downside is that he's forever young, so he'll never get into bars. No, he's constantly being distracted by hormonal changes and even acne, so We're only human. Kind of. Number 4, Armageddon. Making his first debut in Incredible Hulk issue 413, he was also young when his life got turned upside down. Fresh Prince. His father lost his life in a space battle, so he was up to bat when it came to claiming the throne of the Trojan Empire. Now, he did wonders in charge. He led his troops to many victories, worlds, galaxies, solar systems. He was claiming them all. Like, his wife passed away, and this guy was so into ruling that he didn't even notice. She had 2 sons, though, before she passed away, twin boys. But even they had to learn from Lord Vito, Armageddon's friend and advisor, because that's how far away he was. Not a great father. So one of the sons ended up not surviving a mission to Earth, and the other son fell in love with that other son's killer. That son, appropriately named Trauma, kidnapped Atlanta and brought her back to his homeworld, where his father Armageddon was quite impressed. Now the Hulk, Silver Surfer, and the Starjammers came around to demand her release, but he stood by his son's decision and fought the heroes off. Now Armageddon has the Trojan ability to channel cosmic energies through his body and can even withstand a blow from the World Breaker Hulk. So he's not one to mess around with. Number 3, Zzzax. Okay, this one's wild, although I have a feeling we're probably never going to see him in live action. One can only dream. So Zzzax, I'm going to say Zzzax every time. No, I'm just kidding. So Zzzax made his first appearance in the Incredible Hulk issue 166. Right there on the cover it says It, the thing from Dynamo. It was originally the product of an accident that happened at Edison nuclear power plant when a group of criminals tried to power off New York City. So the gunfire that happened caused this massive chain reaction in the atomic reactor and resulted in this psionically charged electromagnetic field of humanoid form to be birthed. Okay, so basically he's a supervillain that can take out anybody in its way. Just a big electric mess. All Zzzax has to do is absorb their intelligence, and in turn it gets smarter, bigger, and badder. Being a creature of pure electricity, it can fly, manipulate electrical fields, and absorb people, all except the Hulk, you guessed it. Which makes for a suitable battle. Big green punchy guy versus Zzzax, the electrical cloud of emotions. 9 tickets in IMAX, please, thanks. Debit? Number 2, Sandman. While Sandman is more commonly known as a Spider-Man villain, sure, he does get on the naughty list for more than one superhero. One of them, of course, being the Incredible Hulk. So when the Sandman found out about the Air Force testing this new space warp ship, he wanted it for himself. I mean, who wouldn't want that lying around in their driveway? Are you kidding? Absolutely. So he wanted it so he could free his friend Blaster from the negative zone. So when he went to the military base, he met the Hulk, convinced the Hulk to help him out, and then while the Hulk was attacking the base and fighting off General Ross and all his forces, Sandman tried to take the ship for himself, that greedy little sandy fella. But Betty Ross was threatened, so the Hulk clapped his hands so hard that Sandman got blasted all across the area. Just nothing but sand, like a bathing suit after it was shaked out after a day at the beach. The Sandman was eventually knocked into a pressurized vat where he later emerged made out of glass. We love science. So if we need to beat the Sandman, we just gotta clap really hard at the same time. That's it. Guys, we all watch Friends. We watch the intro at the same time and we do those 4 claps. Boom, no more Sandman. He's gone. Otherwise, for sure, we need the Hulk. Call him immediately. And finally, number 1, Thanos. I have to finish with this one because although Thanos was in the MCU for sure, I still believe he's a villain that the Hulk should not go against. He's too powerful. Even before Thanos obtains all the Infinity Stones, he's able to lay out the Hulk in the opening scene of Infinity War. He doesn't even use the one stone that he does have, the Power Stone. No, all he needs is his big titan fists and a couple neck jabs, and the Hulk will literally retire. Even when Bruce Banner needs him to come back later on in the film, the Hulk's like, no, absolutely not. That guy? Yeah, get lost. I'm all set. You have the Hulkbuster, you don't need me, bye. In Infinity issue 6, we see Thanos knock the Hulk back with just 1 punch. And if raw strength wasn't enough to do the job, Thanos has made the Hulk attack his fellow Avengers in Avengers Assemble Volume 2, issue 4. There's also the series Thanos vs. the Hulk that was released back in 2015, and it's a bloody good time. I remember the first time seeing Infinity War when the Hulk got rocked. I was genuinely afraid of Thanos. I'm like, oh, he does more than sit in a throne after all. I'm gonna go change my pants now. Cheers.
And at 10, Firebrand. A superpowered enforcer for Justin Hammer, Firebrand is a former activist who turned to violence after believing peaceful protests produced no results. Which sounds awfully familiar now thanks to the Flag Smasher's introduction in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. First appearing in Iron Man Volume 1 number 27 from 1970, Gary Gilbert was born in Detroit, Michigan. Gary wore a suit with an armored exoskeleton that gave him superhuman strength and resistance to fire. It also housed flamethrowers, which allowed him to like shoot out, fire and thermal blasts from his hands, one mounted on each wrists, and flying jets that gave him the ability to fly, which I'm pretty sure sounds familiar at this point. Except with the Flag Smashers having already been introduced and no Iron Man remaining in the MCU as a counter, Firebrand making an appearance seems a little far-fetched. It's still entirely possible, like perhaps this version gets inspired by the Flag Smashers and maybe Peter or someone has to end up dealing with them, but it would be on a much smaller scale, since with all the movements, Marvel could be worried about upsetting people, and I don't think that they would handle, I don't know how they would handle this one. In at 9, Spymaster. First introduced in Iron Man number 33 in 1971, the original Spymaster was leader of the Espionage Elite, and they were a formidable opponent for Iron Man, and successfully infiltrated Stark Industries on more than one occasion. Man, it's like Star Labs, just walk in the front door. He's also evaded Iron Man's grasp multiple times. After his operative Mark Sharon was killed by the Ghost while using the Spymaster identity, the original Spymaster just let the world believe that he was dead. Others have attempted to assume the role as Spymaster, but none really did all that well. Years later, he returned to action after being found by Norman Osborn, but quickly returned to the shadows. He owned a supervillain club, and when the Avengers left Earth in order to battle the Builders, he gathered a group of supervillains and then broke in Stark Tower to steal Iron Man's technology, because the tower was basically defenseless. And while this could be plausible, seeing how Iron Man is dead so his compound would remain partially unguarded, I don't think that the MCU is going to go this route, even if the character has been around for 50 years. It was actually 50 years this January, which is kinda nuts. And it ain't Blizzard. Dr. Gregor Shapanka, PhD, was an employee of Stark Industries. He was conducting private research into a means of achieving physical immortality when first introduced in Tales of Suspense number 45 in 1963. However, he attempted to rob a private vault of Anthony Stark so he could obtain microtransistor designs that Shapanka had intended to sell to further finance his research, because, he was trying to be immortal, and that's what everyone does when they want to be immortal. However, he was caught and unsuccessful because, it was stupid. I guess he didn't have the Thieves Guild training like I do. I'd show the tattoo, but I have like a full sleeve on and a suit, so I can't really, but still. Anyway, he was brought before Stark, who then fired him, understandably, because, he tried to steal from him. Subsequently, Shapanka also created a suit that could generate intense cold, which he had hoped to slow his own aging process. He then started using the suit and its abilities to commit crimes in order to, get more money to fund more research, because, everyone needs that villain. Doc Ock, Jack Frost. Well, the news media had called this new criminal Jack Frost, which is an insult to the man who played Jack Frost in the Santa Claus 3, who also played Mr. Honeywell on How I Met Your Mother. Anyway, he later changes his name from Jack Frost to Blizzard, and eventually the suit comes into the hands of Donnie Gill, who assumes the title in 1987 after Gregor's death in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 20 in 1986.
Number 7. Greg Gargoyle. He made his first comic book debut with Journey into Mystery issue 107. Greg Gargoyle, aka Dr. Paul Duval, was a young chemist working for a pharmaceutical company in Paris, and when he spilt a contaminated potion on his right hand, it started to turn into this stone-like material. Not like Medusa though, where you're stone and immobile. Dr. Greg Gargoyle McGee was actually able to move whilst maintaining the stone form. So he looks scary and he actually can do some damage. But everything he touched turned into this stone stuff. And it's super scary to have this happen, but I can't help but chuckle at how human Greg is when this transformation happens. He's like, oh no, my hand. Oh no, my other hand. Shoot, what do I do? Oh no, my face. That's like when they said you shouldn't touch your face during COVID-19. I'm like, what do I do with my hands? How do I act normal? What have I been doing for 26 years? What's going on? So Greg has a few good ideas with this ability. He tossed a stone airplane at his enemies, so that's a cool thing he can do. And then in the Incredible Hulk issue 363, Greg uses his powers to take down the Hulk. It's not easy, but it sure makes it easier when the Hulk is literally stoned during the fight. Number 6, Nightmare. Making his first debut back in Strange Tales issue 110, Nightmare's origin remains a mystery and it's only known to few. He's both a conceptual entity, part of all of existence, just like eternity, and he's also a deity. So the guy's just trouble. He's just trouble. He was born in the Ever and I dimension, and he was seen as a cousin to the Dweller in Darkness. He knew Dweller's origins, he wanted no part in all that stuff. Nightmare has crossed paths with the Hulk many times. At one point he caused the Hulk to have these hallucinations, and of course he had nightmares for years, because his name's Nightmare. You got it. Even Betty Ross, Bruce's love, isn't safe from Nightmare. Nightmare once once entered her mind and did horrible things to her while she was dreaming, he's kind of like Freddy Krueger, and seeing as WandaVision didn't want to bring in Nightmare when they had a good chance to, it's probably best if the Hulk and Betty never met him as well. Number 5. Ravage. Dr. Geoffrey Crawford was a professor of physics at Desert State University and was a mentor to Bruce Banner initially. See, Crawford was developing this teleportation device where point A would scan all of your DNA and then zoom, your DNA would end up on the other end. Sounds like nothing could ever go wrong at all in that thing. So Banner went back to Crawford in hopes that he could help him think of a solution for his big green alter ego problem. And then when Bruce got there, Crawford was in a wheelchair and he was suffering from a disease, but he still opted out to help Bruce with his problem. What a nice guy. Turns out Crawford wanted Bruce's DNA in hopes of curing his debilitating disease, but while testing out his theory, he warped to point B and then the DNA had bonded with him, creating this other type of Hulk called Ravage. And because Bruce tried to stop him during this, his DNA meshed together while he was angry, so you already know what that looks like. Number 4. Red Hulk. He made his first appearance in Incredible Hulk issue 1 as General Ross, but come the first issue of volume 2, Ross goes beast mode and becomes one of the Hulk's greatest threats of all time. Red Hulk was created using gamma radiation, like the Hulk, but what makes him more of a foe is the fact that he also has cosmic rays added to that already aggressive mix. So the Red Hulk, or Rulk, which is fun to say, doesn't get stronger the angrier he gets like Bruce. No, he actually gets hotter. Yeah, he gets so hot and then all of a sudden he turns into Ryan Gosling. No, like heat. He physically burns up, that's what I mean. So during one of the first run-ins with the Red Hulk, when the two Goliaths were scrapping it out, the sand around them melted because of this heat and turned into glass, which is pretty cool. More stuff to break too, which you gotta love if you're the Hulk. Number 3. Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. Now this cave was actually home to the lost temple of Cyttorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, which is a great idea if you've seen every movie. He read the inscription and possessed the power of the crimson bands of Cyttorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Then an explosion went off, poof, and the Juggernaut was trapped under the rubble and Xavier got out of dodge. Now after he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village with the previous man who held the Juggernaut title, Gentaiko, in the mix as well. While it might be cool to see Juggernaut and the Hulk fight in live action, we also have to get the X-Men there first, and it doesn't seem like Marvel is in a rush to bring them in, as we saw from WandaVision. Hashtag Ralph Boner. In World War Hulk in X-Men issue 2, we see these two magnificent beasts go at it, and they're both pretty close in strength, but what makes Kane hard to fight is the fact that he can last some time without needed rest. His stamina is nuts. He can also summon his armor at any time, so that certainly comes in handy. Number 2. Wendigo. This next one comes from Canada, so we gotta keep an eye out for this one, Chris. We gotta keep our peepers open. Paul Cartier made his comic book debut in the Incredible Hulk issue 162. Yes, that rhymed. The Wendigo is a result of an ancient curse from the elder gods of Canadian folklore, and it transforms anybody who eats human flesh into this massive fur-covered beast, so don't eat flesh. It's been referred to as an indestructible force of nature being made from the gods and all. Now this all began when two Canadian lads were in the wilderness hunting, and then when wolves attacked and wounded one of the men, he ended up passing away from the attack, and his buddy was really hungry. He was starving, so he kind of sort of had to eat his friend's skin to survive. Yuck, but also you have to, man, it's part of it. Thus turning him into this Wendigo. Now it took Wolverine's help for the Hulk to take the Wendigo down, and just the origin story alone for this guy, I don't think we'll be seeing humans eating other humans in the MCU anytime soon, or if we do, hopefully it's Marvel Zombies. Either way, I'm not ready for that yet. Number 1, the Maestro. I know that name sounds cool, but this guy is an absolute nightmare to be around. He is not a conductor of classical music, no. In the series Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect, we see this version of the Hulk way more weird than Smart Hulk dabbing. Yeah, even weirder than that. He made his first appearance in a vision in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2 issue 401, and Maestro was the main antagonist in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect storyline. Now this story of course takes place about 100 or so years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet super close to extinction. Now this alternate future version of the Hulk, Maestro, had been absorbing all of the nuclear radiation this entire time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet. Massive increases in strength and anger plus the brains of Banner made him arguably unstoppable. He's big, smart, strong, and a total nightmare to be around. I mean, maybe we could get some sort of future imperfect storyline, but I feel like it's way too dark for Disney. But hey, never say never.
Number 10, Tempus. Imagine if instead of needing the time stone to manipulate time, we actually just had a hero who could do it just like that. Like, that was their thing. Enter Tempus. Tempus is Eva Bell. Her mutant power is just that, time manipulation or chronokinesis. While not considered Omega level yet, Tempus is well on her way to being there. Her powers allow her to manipulate time around her, speeding it up or slowing it down, making her pretty hard to defeat. Because if you came at her, she could just be like, and it takes you like 100 years to take a step, so basically you're dead. Done. Think of all of those scenes that we saw with Quicksilver in Fox's X-Men films, but instead of Tempus moving really fast, she just instead manipulates the speed of others around her through manipulating time. Tempus can also use her abilities to travel through time, but has less control over this ability. Hence why she's not Omega level yet. Number 9, Blindfold. We haven't seen Ruth Aldine for some time, but she has been hinted to be a descendant of Irene Adler, aka the mutant known as Destiny. Ruth was known for being a powerful telepath who also possesses telekinetic skills. She was mainly known for her astral form and astral plane powers and abilities, as well as her ability to perceive future events and tap into someone's or something's history via touch. It's also important to note that she's one of the few people that can make an astral form that's also physical, which is pretty crazy. Blindfold would likely not be a character we would expect to see in the MCU if we get a story involving Krakoa, as on Krakoa it seems that no precog mutants are really allowed to exist, especially not if they're as gifted as Blindfold was. And probably not also because she's related to Destiny, so that's also a no-no. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, I know I love talking about mutants with all of you fun folks out there. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Iceman. I really don't want Iceman to be too powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the same way that I don't want Storm or Jean to be either, because I just like those characters. But the reality is he, like the others, might just be a bit too powerful. Iceman is an Omega level mutant, which basically means he is not only super capable and disciplined when it comes to the use of his powers, but is also considered the tippy top of excellence in his power category. Iceman started out as really Snowman and his little black booties, but now he has grown to be so powerful that he can help to effectively terraform a planet with his abilities, aiding the terraforming of Mars in planet-size X-Men when it came to ensuring there was enough water on that planet. Not only that, but Bobby no longer ever needs to fight alone, as he can also now make little ice or snow golems, effectively always possessing an army just at his fingertips. He's like, ice it up. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is like some Salt Bay something. That's how Iceman uses powers. He's like, I am Salt Bay.
And it's 7, Crimson Dynamo. Technically, in a sense, Crimson Dynamo was already introduced into the MCU. However, his actual name of Anton Vanko was introduced to the MCU as the father of Whiplash, which I think just proves my point alone as to why Crimson Dynamo is too powerful for the MCU. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 46 in 1963, the Crimson Dynamo's armor was equipped with an array of miniature electrical generators that allowed him to generate and manipulate electrical fields for a variety of effects, including but not limited to electrical blasts, electrical override, and a disruptor field that could be used to scramble electronic devices. Wonderful. The character was so strong that they had to make a new character named Ivan and make him Whiplash, who was introduced into the comics in Iron Man vs. Whiplash, but in the comics he was also named Anton Vanko, with no relation to the Crimson Dynamo. It's confusing as hell. And at 6, Titanium Man. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 69, nice. From 1965, not as nice, Boris Bolsky quickly rose through Soviet government ranks and became popular in the Communist Party. He had also briefly worked with Black Widow as an intelligence agent, but due to political reasons he was assigned to Serbia. He learned that some of the camp members were scientists that had worked with Anton Vanko, who, as I mentioned last number, was the Crimson Dynamo. So Bolsky planned to make a new armor set capable of defeating Iron Man to prove the USSR's superiority over the US, because of course that's why. A titanium alloy armor was made, however, and it was much larger and heavier than Iron Man's, due to the camp lacking sufficient resources to design micro components. Because, you know, Tony Stark built this in a cave! with a pile of scraps. Bolsky was unable to defeat Iron Man on several occasions. However, I don't think this character would be introduced because they already made reference to him in the first Iron Man movie, where Stark made his suit a gold titanium alloy, which I thought was funny since people were calling him Iron Man, but in reality it was gold titanium alloy man. But like, you know, that line now makes more sense with this. Plus, Tony's dead, so I don't think they could want to beat Iron Man unless they go after like Pepper Potts or something. Halfway through into number 5, Fang Foom. Okay. Let's be honest, most of the supervillains that heroes fight are at least similar to them in some way. Most of Iron Man's villains have some form of robotic suits like his, but less efficient. Spider-Man's are mostly animal themed. However, when Iron Man went up against an actual fucking dragon, we all seemed a little bit confused. That's Fang Foom for you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, he's not an actual dragon, but for a while, the Mandarin, who was working with Finn, did actually believe that he was a dragon of myths and legend. The two together ended up conquering a third of China, and honestly, that's kinda nuts. However, it was revealed that Finn was actually an alien and that his fellow aliens were coming to conquer Earth, resulting in Mandarin having to team up with Iron Man and War Machine to stop it. I'm sure Mandarin regretted this decision after he found out that, you know, he's an alien. I don't think the MCU is going to introduce Finn, at least yet. But honestly, I don't know anymore with the whole multiverse, and now there's more happening, and like a dragon turns out to be an alien. It's par for the course at this point. But I think that Fang Foom is a little too much for the MCU. In at 4, Ultimo. Like I said last number, most supervillains at least base part of their persona off the hero, because we all know villains just want Senpai to notice them. MatPat, I'm still waiting on you. Getting MatPat to notice me will literally be my supervillain origin story. Anyway, Ultimo is no different. However, he didn't really do this to himself. Ultimo is a giant robot created by an alien race that the Mandarin had taken control of. The cool one, not the actor. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 76 in 1966, Ultimo only died recently in 2020, Force Works number 3 in June of 2020. While Ultimo was under his control, however, Mandarin claimed that Ultimo was his own creation. The only thing though that Mandarin actually created, besides changing his programming, was an artificial blue skin for the robot. Yeah. Mandarin utilized Ultimo numerous times against Iron Man, including once in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. During that battle, Iron Man trapped Ultimo beneath the Earth's crust, and as a result, the robot meandered through the planet's magma. And you know what that caused him to do? Not melt, but absorb more power. Years later, when Iron Man was in battle with like a rock creature who was called the Earth Mover for some reason in California, Ultimo re-emerged without his blue skin, significantly taller and much more powerful. He vaporized the Earth Mover in a second and destroyed a remote unit of Iron Man, and then went on just destroying everything he could. So safe to say it's probably a little too much for the MCU. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Count Nefaria. Count Lucino Nefaria was the descendant of a long line of Italian noblemen, and he inherited a vast fortune. If only. Introduced in Avengers number 13 in 1965, damn, these guys are old, Nefaria was fascinated with technological advances, and throughout his life commissioned scientists to create inventions that were far in advance of their current scientific standing. After allowing himself to be experimented on though, Nefaria was granted absurd levels of super strength, speed, and energy projection strong enough to make him a danger to any and all superhero teams. That's why Nefaria was introduced as a generic Marvel Universe villain in the Avengers instead of just an Iron Man rogue, and has had several run-ins with both the Avengers and the X-Men. And while we've had some powerful adversaries in the MCU, I think that at this point, the super strong, fast, and energy projecting Count Nefaria is going to be saved for another Avengers movie at least, or maybe even a new big bad if they get that far. But I think that it's probably going to be a little much. Penultimately, into number 2, the Mandarin. Okay, so while the Mandarin might technically have been introduced in Iron Man 3, he was used as a MacGuffin. The Mandarin wasn't actually a villain. He was just an actor who was covering up the actions of Aldrich Killian and AIM, since Mandarin's iconic 10 rings hadn't been introduced yet, which is kind of proof enough as to how the Mandarin was too powerful. And then comes the latest MCU installment, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. You've got to be kidding me. I'm actually upset that they introduced these because it totally ruins the ability to correct the Mandarin. I mean, you can't introduce the correct Mandarin now, unless they end up using the name because they were inspired or something, but at this point it's been so long that it wouldn't really make any sense. The McLuhan power rings grant the Mandarin insane powers, like manipulation of atomic and molecular structures, beams of force, vortex generation, disintegration disintegration beams, creating areas of darkness, lighting fires from a distance, mental manipulation, electrical blasts, and intense cold and ice control. How is this not the next big MCU big bad? Because he's too powerful. They literally had to make it Kang, because they're like, oh, we're gonna introduce the 10 rings, but oh no. No. Finally, in at number 1, Temujin. Temujin is actually the son of the Mandarin, who ends up inheriting the 10 rings, which already makes him as powerful as his daddy. However, this in combination with his ability to focus chi to give him super strength makes him even more powerful than his father, even nearly killing Iron Man once and for all, which would have been absolutely insane. So it's safe to say that this guy has to be number 1, since he literally has the same powers as the real Mandarin and then some. Hopefully they don't make this guy into an actor or something ridiculous like that. That seems just sad.
Number 10, Quasar. Quasar is Wendell Vaughn, a being of pure quantum energy. When armed with his quantum bands, he is even more powerful. The quantum bands allow Quasar to create constructs and shields. They also give him the power to absorb energy and complete quantum jumps, effectively teleporting. Quasar managed to survive in a fight against Annihilus, attempting to teleport away before he was destroyed, but only managing to do so at the last minute with his mind. For a time, he'd become trapped in the negative zone mentally, ceasing to have a physical form, passing on the mantle of Quasar for a time to Phyla-Vell and Nova's Richard Rider after. However, Quasar's defeat during Annihilation would seemingly only make him stronger, as after a time he managed to somehow regain his physical form, returning only to go on a journey to the Cancerverse, acting as a scout for his own universe. Existing as a being of pure quantum energy means that Quasar is a powerful hero to go up against, and might make him too powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the end. Good old Wendell. Number 9, Gladiator. Gladiator is one of those heroes whose powers are only limited by his own state of mind. Literally. Gladiator's confidence is directly tied to his power levels, and the more confident that he feels, the more unstoppable he becomes. For a time, Gladiator actually ruled his people as the Magister of the Shi'ar Empire, out in space. But more recently, he decided to step down, believing that Aneramani was needed on the throne, and relinquishing his place to Xandra. Gladiator himself is Kalark, a Strontian, who went through an enhancement process to make him worthy of the rank of Gladiator. He is immensely powerful, being super strong, fast, agile, invulnerable, and possessing a healing factor. He is capable of interstellar flight and is an incredibly gifted and experienced fighter. And friends, if you are liking this list and you want more lists like it, if you want that part 3, I don't know if we can do one, but I mean there's a lot of characters in the Marvel Universe, so I'm sure we can. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Black Bolt. Black Bolt is the king of the Inhumans. We probably won't see him anytime soon in the MCU, not just because you'd then have to explain all about the Inhumans and what they're up to, and because he's super OP and can wipe out most opponents with just a whisper, but because we already tried to introduce the world to the Inhumans via their own television series, and it did not go well. Black Bolt, however, still has some pretty cool powers, and the Inhumans are a pretty cool bunch, if we did feel that they might be a good fit. We just might have to tone down Black Bolt's powers somewhat, or maybe also find like another way to have them? I don't know. He was considered powerful enough to take on Thanos, and he even survived a one-on-one battle against him in the comics. He was able to shatter Thanos' armor during their fight, though his powerful voice did not harm the Mad Titan directly. Rats. He also seemingly killed one of the most powerful Omega-level mutants around, Vulcan, who was on part 1 of our list. However, this was later retconned to not have actually happened, as we later learned during Hickman's reign over the X-Books that Vulcan actually survived the fight. Apparently. He looked pretty dead. It looked like he was pretty dead, but he survived. How? We don't know. Number 7, Kid Omega. Despite the fact that Iceman is really impressive, I had to put Quentin Quire a number above on this list. Despite his multiple comedic deaths in the Dawn of X and Reign of X era, oh, what a time. The fact remains that telepaths tend to rule, while by comparison, most other power sets just tend to drool. Sorry. Quentin Quire has come a long way from when he was first introduced. Sure, we knew he had potential, but we're now seeing him grow into that potential, and in some cases even exceed it. And let's keep in mind that he's still pretty young in comparison to some of the other main cast of well-established mutants, who for the most part are completely grown up now. Kid Omega still has a few things to learn, but is considered to be one of the strongest telepaths in existence already, and an Omega level mutant. Number 6. Vulcan. Vulcan is known for being Omega level or even beyond. He is the youngest and most powerful of the Summers brothers. Vulcan is Gabriel Summers. At the time when Christopher and Catherine Summers were abducted, it turned out that Catherine was actually pregnant with Gabriel. When she was killed, he was removed from her body and was matured in an incubation accelerator, skipping many of his childhood years. Vulcan would manifest energy-based powers like his brothers. His powers allow him to absorb and redistribute a diverse group of energy types. Not only that, but he can absorb a lot of energy when it comes to his limits. He can also use his abilities to absorb and drain the powers of others under certain circumstances, thereby suppressing his opponent's power, which is pretty OP. Let's be real. Number 5. Legion. One of the most powerful mutants out there that we'll likely never see in the MCU is Legion. Legion is the son of Charles Xavier aka Professor X and Gabrielle Haller. The two supposedly fell in love during Charles's time in Israel, and David Haller aka Legion was born as a result of their love affair. However, it was more recently suggested that this story was not entirely based in love and romance, but that Charles had sought out Gabrielle as an ideal mate when it came to the chances of creating a mutant who could warp reality. It should also be noted that of all of Moira's lives that she has lived, the current continuity of 616 is her only life where Legion has existed. Legion has a dissociative identity disorder, which also lends to his mutant abilities. For each separate persona that resides within him, each has their own unique set of powers. He is an Omega level mutant capable of pretty much almost anything, and has claimed that within him reside at least 200 Omega level split personalities. That's a lot of Omega level. Sounds like it would be a lot for Marvel to tackle. Also, that hairdo. That would be a lot, just in and of itself. I love Legion's hairdo. I love that he still has it. Number 4. Storm. As I said earlier, I really don't want an MCU mutant superhero squad without Storm, now Queen of Arakko, formerly known as the planet Mars, but the reality is, if we're going to have mutants like her and Iceman, or really any of the other Omega levels on this list, we're gonna need to do something about their power levels. We might have to meet a much younger Aurora, who was less in control of her powers, or otherwise just tone down some of her capabilities, as Storm is now pretty OP, and it's very deserved, truth be told. The thing I really love about Storm actually is, sure, I mean, she can manipulate the weather on a scale that could threaten the whole globe with a massive storm, but she also doesn't need her mutant powers to be intimidating or be powerful. She's also a master combatant, having been trained by some of the best warriors in all of Wakanda, on top of her already established abilities, and she could likely intimidate most people who have heard tell of her with just a glance, because she's Storm. Number 3. Jean Grey. More specifically, the Phoenix version of Jean, or just really unlocked potential version of Jean Grey as well, I guess. Marvel Girl, even initially in the comics, struck me as a powerhouse when we first met her, although we would see her powers reined in throughout those early years. Remember when, in the Danger Room, her test was to basically do a super fast cross-stitch using her telekinesis powers? She eventually surpassed the mental blocks that were put in place by Professor X, initially to protect her when she was younger. Jean Grey is considered to be one of the most powerful psionics in existence. She can defeat you with just a mere thought. So to have her in the MCU, like Storm, we need to tone her down or have her show up with mental blocks firmly in place in order just to have her there. Number 2. X-Man. X-Man is Nate Grey, the genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. He was made in a lab of Sinisters, but hails from an alternate reality. Nate is the genetic child of Marvel Girl and Cyclops in the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295. However, that wouldn't stop him from venturing into the reality of Earth 616 from time to time. He was created by Sinister, while Essex was a servant of High Lord Apocalypse, who ruled for a long time in the AOA reality. Nate was created to be the perfect mutant and is considered to be Omega level or even beyond, being considered the most powerful psionic in any reality. His list of abilities is vast, but basically he is a psionic, mutant, and extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who is capable of warping reality. He's also considered a potential or suitable host for the Phoenix Force as well. Just a little bonus for you. Number 1. Onslaught. It was a toss-up, by the way, for the top spot on this list for me, between Nate Grey and Onslaught, but ultimately, I think in a fight Onslaught would win, because he's bigger, and big guys usually stand a pretty good chance of winning in the comics, even if they are villains. I know that sounds like a simple reason as to why he'd win, but I stand by it. Onslaught is like a massive dude. a massive physical astral form, you know what I mean? Onslaught might have made a return in the Way of X series and following one-shot Onslaught Revelation, but I don't think we'll be ready for him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe anytime soon. Onslaught is an insanely powerful mutant who initially represented the dark side of Charles Xavier combined with Magneto. Onslaught was unleashed when Charles snapped and defeated Magneto more permanently by wiping his mind clean. In reality, however, Charles was not able to completely get rid of Magneto, because that's not how that works, and instead Magneto's mind was simply removed from his body and kind of absorbed into Xavier, awakening Charles' own dark side and bonding with him to create Onslaught. And now Onslaught lives in everyone. Yay! Spoilers. Number 10. Powerhouse. It feels weird to have Franklin Richards at the bottom of a too powerful or most powerful style list. However, while Powerhouse was once one of the most powerful heroes in all of the Marvel Universe, even becoming so when he was just a little baby, so much so that his dad, Reed, actually had to shut off his son's powers, he has been having a rough go in the comics over the last little while. Franklin was believed to be a mutant with the power to warp reality, giving him access to a ton of extra power, but unfortunately his powers have been on the fritz recently, and now he seems to have completely lost them. It's even believed that he was never truly a mutant, but instead subconsciously used his powers to alter his DNA, meaning that he can't even go to Krakoa currently anymore. I wouldn't expect us to see any kind of reality warping version of Franklin in the Fantastic Four film, if we get a version of him there at all. Although honestly, depowering him in the comics may be part of a plot to have him come into the film, more comic book accurate to who he is currently in the comics, meaning production and writers wouldn't actually have to worry about his crazy powers and writing those in, which would likely get in the way of any massive threat, as while powered, he could normally stop, well, just about any of them, like that. No Infinity Gauntlet snaps, but just normal power reality warping snaps. Number 9. Rachel Summers. Rachel is 1. Really powerful, and 2. Just pretty unusual, which makes her a hard sell for the Marvel Cinematic Universe on both those fronts. Although the mutants will be coming soon, so there is a small chance, I suppose, that Rachel could show up at some point. Rachel isn't from the main continuity of Earth 616, but is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, of her own reality, Earth 811. Rachel is considered to be Omega level, so in theory, the highest level there is of mutant, although there are a few who threaten to surpass that level in the comics. She is an insanely powerful telepath, telekinetic, and can also manipulate time, even being capable of traveling through it. Rachel can also shield herself against time manipulation from outside forces, protecting her against alterations to the timeline. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about all the cool things happening in the MCU, or not happening in this case, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Squirrel Girl. It feels weird putting Squirrel Girl on this list, but she is weirdly one of the most OP heroes we have in the comics. Squirrel Girl is a hero who can pretty much defeat any threat she goes up against without usually even needing to fight. She handily defeated Dr. Doom using her influence over squirrels, and defeated Galactus just by having a conversation with him and being overall fearless. Squirrel Girl usually befriends many other heroes and villains alike whom she meets, which tends to be her secret weapon when it comes to winning any fight. Doreen Green is also a kind of odd hero, so we likely won't be seeing her in the MCU anytime soon for that reason as well. But honestly, I kind of wish that we would. She might be odd and weirdly OP, but she's also had a lot of great moments in the comics, and it would be really cool to see her cheerful, awkward, and infectiously fun nature come to life on the big screen. Number 7. Starbrand. Another cosmic hero who right now is in the care, I suppose, of the Avengers is Starbrand. Well, one of the Starbrands. There have been other Starbrands before in Marvel Comics, but this one is unique in the sense that she is just a little baby, or maybe more of a toddler now actually. Either way, it would be pretty weird to see such a powerful young one fighting as a member of the Avengers, unless we're thinking of going the route of Baby Yoda, I guess, aka Grogu in Star Wars. Still, it seems unlikely. Whether it's little baby Selby or Kevin Connor, it's very unlikely that we're going to get either of the Starbrands out in the MCU. Their invulnerability, super strength, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, cosmic awareness, and healing powers may simply just be too much for the MCU to handle. Sorry, Starbrand. Star brands. Number 6. Hyperion. Hyperion is known for being Marvel's version of a literal Superman. Sure, we have Sentry and Captain America who are comparable in terms of their powers and their role, but Hyperion in the newest Heroes Reborn series seemed to be really exuding those Superman vibes. Here Hyperion was the leader of the Squadron Supreme of America, an elite team of heroes who were also all kinda messed up. Hyperion himself seemingly had a god complex that perhaps was well earned considering what he was capable of. When all their enemies escaped their negative zone prison, Mark Milton as Hyperion was the first to respond, and he handedly took down pretty much everyone who got out, including Galactus, a version of Gladiator, a version of the Beyonder, a Giant Man version of Ultron / Evil Hank Pym, and a version of the Annihilation Wave. Granted, this Hyperion technically is an alt version, but either way you slice it, either way you dice it, any version of the hero is really too powerful and likely too similar to DC's Supes to make an appearance in the MCU. Number 5. Magic. Teleporters always rank high on my list of powerful heroes because I think teleportation is super OP, and Magic is definitely no exception there, although she is exceptional. So exceptional in fact, if we didn't get to see her in the MCU, I personally would not be surprised. True, we did get to see Magic appear in the New Mutants film, but that itself was outside of MCU continuity and canon, so doesn't count, which is really unfortunate as Anya Taylor-Joy was perfect in that role, and we likely won't get to see her take up the mantle again, which kinda bums me out. Magic is a member of the New Mutants who is also known for being not just a powerful teleporter, but magic wielder as the ruler of Limbo. This is where Magic teleports through to get where she is going. While in Limbo, she also becomes god level due to her attachment and relationship with the dimension. Magic also has a dark side known as Dark Child. While in her Dark Child persona, she becomes virtually unstoppable and generally a lot more evil. Number 4. Nova. It feels pretty unlikely that we'll ever get to see any version of Nova show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point. Why? Well, because the Nova Corps were seemingly wiped out by Thanos when he went after them for the Power Stone. It's believed that all of Xandar was decimated in his attack, which likely means that the Nova Corps who were there were some of the first people to go. Unless there was somehow, I guess, a lone survivor who could become Nova in the future, it seems very unlikely we'll see any kind of character attached to Xandar or the Corps. This could be just what Marvel Studios was hoping to eliminate the chances of though with this plot point, as all versions of Nova are considered to be pretty epically powerful, whether we're talking about Sam Alexander, Rich Rider, or Eve Bakian. Just all the Novas. They're just all pretty crazy. Number 3. Blue Marvel. So as much as I really want Adam Brashear to come to the MCU, there is also a concern many have around the fact that this hero might just be too powerful to appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least as he is in the comics. Maybe if we toned him down? Granted, we have Captain Marvel, and now we have Monica Rambeau, who's pretty crazy powerful. So I'm really hoping I'm wrong about this one. But still, there is Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, and then there is Blue Marvel, who's kind of operating on a whole other level, due to the fact that his powers are derived from antimatter, and the fact that he is basically an antimatter generator / reactor. And if you don't know, antimatter is like crazy powerful and crazy efficient in the Marvel universe. I don't know about antimatter in real life. I don't even know if there is antimatter in real life. I don't know about that science. Number 2. Eternity. Eternity is not a conventional hero and more a cosmic entity, but like the Living Tribunal, they are also generally seen as a force of good, so hence why I'm counting them on the list. Eternity is actually just below the Living Tribunal in terms of rank in the universe and is the personification of time. They exist alongside their sister, Infinity. Eternity is capable of manipulating time and space on a lucrative scale. They are immortal and are considered an integral part of the universe, existing alongside other major concepts, which are also represented by powerful entities. Number 1. One Above All. The One Above All isn't your typical hero, but they are a very powerful force of good in the MCU, like Eternity. One Above All is seen as the creator of the multiverse and all beings within it. They are basically the god of the multiverse, the ultimate creator. We talked about the Living Tribunal on part 1 of this list, who is seen as the ultimate bringer of justice, the ultimate judge throughout the Marvel multiverse, and the One Above All is actually believed to be the entity that the Living Tribunal works for. One above all is believed to be all-powerful and omnipotent, getting involved in the matters of its creations only when its interference is truly needed. They were the one who made Adam Warlock take up the mantle as their new Living Tribunal as payment for restoring all of reality after it was destroyed, which seems like a fair trade. They're like, hey, Adam Warlock, do this job and have lots of power, and I will return reality. Just come work for me, you know? I need a new Living Tribunal. You know how it is when the Living Tribunal dies. Actually, I don't know how that is. Sounds like a very rare problem.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. Now, he's not that easy to forget once you take a glimpse at him, because he's kind of terrifying in every way. He's also obsessed with experimenting on mutants, and yes, that includes himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but he felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. Doesn't that sound lovely? It's off the bat. He couldn't get funding from the Hellfire Club, so he got together a group that he named the Marauders, and then he got them to kidnap people off the streets of London so he can then experiment on them. So dark already, the guy is twisted. He even tried to experiment on his son, who was no longer alive. This guy might be a little bit too twisted for the MCU, but he does bring back dead characters, so maybe he's a blessing in disguise. Number 9, Blastar. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 62, Blastar once was the ruler of Balur, a planet in the negative zone. The inhabitants of said planet were not a fan of this horrible ruling, so they voted him off the island. They revolted and sent him adrift into the cosmos. Now, during that field trip in space, he bumped into Mr. Fantastic, who at that point was already on his way back to Earth with the Inhuman Triton. So Blastar followed them through the portal, teamed up with Sandman, and fought the Fantastic Four. He ended up losing this battle and was sent back to his own dimension, which sounds like a win, but this was only the beginning. He then became king once again, but this time he expanded his territory. It also helped that this time around he stole Annihilus's cosmic control rod. This guy is pretty hardcore, and at one point in the comics, he tried to collect all the Infinity Stones before Thanos. Somebody tell Blastar he's a little bit too late for the MCU. And before we continue on with this list, you know the drill. If you're loving the content, or if you want a part 3, or if you're just liking the curls so far, give us a thumbs up. It really helps us out quite a bit, and then in turn, we can give you back as much as we can. You're the best, thank you so much. Right back to this list. Number 8, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness spawned by the first nightmare. Doesn't that sound nice already? Sick. Amal Farouk was the leader of the underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter in Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happens to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him. It's pretty terrifying. He feeds on the shadows of your soul. So yeah, with Marvel veering off into the cosmic side of things, maybe we could see a Shadow King whenever the X-Men come into the picture. Now in the comics, before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. So maybe he's been there the whole time. I kind of hope he's not though, because he's terrifying.
Number 7, Vulcan. Vulcan is another mutant who is likely considered too powerful and possibly too complicated to show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know we are getting mutants, so likely a lot of these folks could be showing up at some point, but I don't know if Vulcan's gonna be one of them. Vulcan is not only Omega level, but is actually implied to be one of the few that I mentioned earlier who could potentially be past, or at least at times surpass Omega levels. He is one of the coolest power sets in comics, which is also shared by other super awesome but perhaps less mainstream mutants such as Bishop. I love Bishop. He's another mutant that I would love to see show up in the MCU with the X-Men crew at some point. I mean, we did get Cable and Deadpool, so I feel like that could be possible. Vulcan has no limit to the type of energy he can absorb and utilize, even being able to harness magical or cosmic energy from the likes of Adam Warlock, although I do believe he does have limits when it comes to how much energy he can harness or utilize. Vulcan also can use his powers to reduce or even turn off the powers of those that he faces. Vulcan is Gabriel Summers, the mysterious younger brother of both Scott and Alex Summers. The one that for years we were like, does he exist? Why did Mr. Sinister randomly mention him and then we just never saw him? And then he finally showed up. In the 2000s, he was like, hey, just been here all along. doing other stuff in space, being real messed up. Number 6. Sentry. The Sentry would be an interesting character to have in the MCU because he is actually a hero who was retconned into existence. The Sentry is Robert Reynolds, who was revealed to be a drug addict that was looking for a fix when he stumbled upon the Golden Sentry serum, and accidentally basically became a hero. Unfortunately, due to the fact that Bob was mentally unstable, he ended up not just becoming the world's greatest hero, but also having another persona who was considered the world's greatest villain, known as the Void. When it was revealed that the Sentry and the Void were both Bob Reynolds, the heroes banded together to help Sentry make the world forget that he ever existed, which basically allowed the Void to also not exist. In so doing, Bob went back to living a relatively normal life, but when his memories began to resurface years later, he would return. Doing so would also awaken the Void within him, and it would once again be revealed, this time more to all of the heroes, that the two, hero and arch nemesis, were actually connected and the same person. Number 5. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is one of the strongest beings in the Marvel Universe. He is considered to be the most powerful of all Galactus' heralds, and despite usually being associated with that Marvel antagonist, typically acts as a hero, even choosing to stay on Earth for a time after coming to warn them of the arrival of Galactus. Silver Surfer is Norrin Radd, a hero who possesses the power Cosmic, which grants him tons of astonishing abilities. The power Cosmic is OP. He's also virtually indestructible, being immortal, invulnerable, and having a healing factor, even if you could hurt him. He also now is basically untouchable, being intangible as well. And that might sound like a setback, but he can still merge with other living beings, in essence bonding with them and using them as a host. So even though he can't physically touch stuff, he kinda still can. The Silver Surfer isn't just powerful alone either, he also possesses the power to bestow portions of his powers on others, which would have been really handy when everyone was dealing with Thanos, his army, and the Black Order in Avengers Infinity War. Number 4. Hope Summers. Hope Summers is the adopted daughter of both Cable and later Cable's wife in the future, who is actually also named Hope, but not the same Hope. Hope was the mutant Messiah baby, the first new mutant born after the events of M-Day, and actually originally she didn't have a name at all. The baby would be raised by both Cable and Hope, only being given the name Hope Summers after her adoptive mother died, so she was basically named after her. Hope's mutant powers allow her to mimic the powers of others, managing to use those powers at their peak potential, even if she's completely inexperienced with them or unaware even of what they are or how they work at all. Hope's use of any powers she adopts is intuitive. She doesn't need to make physical contact to mimic them, she just needs to be in the area of the mutant who possesses them as well. Her own powers cannot be absorbed, and she has a calming effect on others' mutant abilities, basically helping to perfect and stabilize them. So Hope's also just a powerful character to have around if you're a mutant who's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. This makes her an integral part of the Five, a group of mutants responsible for resurrecting fallen or lost mutants of Krakoa. Despite the fact that Hope's powers are believed to be restricted to the adoption of other mutant abilities, she and Scarlet Witch together rid the world of the Phoenix Force during Avengers vs. X-Men. Now, this is kinda weird because Scarlet Witch no longer is a mutant in the current comic book continuity, which could imply that Hope's powers mimicry is actually not therefore mutant exclusive. Unless something else was going on there and it was more like Scarlet Witch influencing Hope, I don't know, but I'm just saying if Hope was influencing any of that, that doesn't make sense if Scarlet Witch is no longer a mutant. Unless that's all a lie, and that's gonna be re-retconned away. Please do that. Please do that. Number 3. Phoenix. One hero that it seems is really hard to get right when it comes to the films is Jean Grey. Jean by herself is already likely too powerful to show up, although I will say I think you can make that work if you just, I don't know, put more of a lockdown on her power set. However, if we are talking Jean unleashed, Jean at her full potential, that's just not going to work. And if we're talking about bringing Phoenix into the mix and bonding Phoenix with Jean, that's also going to be a huge problem. Anytime you have a character like that who has the power to warp or manipulate reality, you're going to have a challenging time writing any kind of threat for them to face. As with what usually happens with Jean Grey, you can have the Dark Phoenix come in and play villain, you can have Jean struggle to control her own powers and even struggle to maybe hold on to her sanity in the face of her powers, but a hero who happens to have control and be able to basically fix the world as she sees fit, that's a problem. It's like any villain you face, you're just gonna be like, well, you're gone. You never existed. Done. Easy. What's next? Number 2. Living Tribunal. The Living Tribunal isn't entirely a hero, or not a hero in the traditional sense, but is usually considered to be a force of good because of what they represent. The Living Tribunal brings a force of balance and justice to the cosmos and across the multiverse. While there are many different alternate versions of characters from each universe, there's actually only one Living Tribunal, which watches over all of the realities, getting involved when they believe an injustice has been committed and the scales need to be balanced. Of course, only if the injustice is super great. They're not just like, hey, I saw you littered, that's not cool, let's go to court. So not every injustice. The Living Tribunal was the one to call to trial a case of 1610, or the ultimate reality, versus the current main continuity reality of Earth 616. This case was about determining which reality should ultimately be considered the true main reality, as the Living Tribunal considered that the Earth of 1610 could actually be a good replacement for Earth 616. Fortunately, She-Hulk was able to convince them otherwise, because She-Hulk is an amazing lawyer. Number 1. The Brothers. The Brothers are a duo of cosmic entities who exist even outside of their respective multiverses, as each one represents either the DC or the Marvel multiverse. These two characters initially showed up in a crossover comic called DC vs. Marvel, which already made it unlikely that we'll see them anytime soon in the MCU, because we would then need a crossover movie, which I don't think is going to happen yet. Maybe at some point. For a time, the brothers considered fighting one another in an attempt to acquire complete uniqueness, but instead decided, as they were pretty evenly matched, that they should appoint representatives from their universes to act as their champions. It's believed that the brothers are actually more powerful than the sum of their parts, meaning that even the Living Tribunal could be considered below them in terms of power levels and importance. While the brothers also have a male-centric name, the Brothers, it should be noted that they're actually genderless, so they're also kind of the sisters. They're just whatever. They're just called the Brothers. They look like giant mechs, so you know. No bits. I don't think.